tonight we're going to talk about hopelessness and overwhelm. During these times of duress and extreme, challenge and change, and however you want to call it, it is quite normal for many of us to feel hopeless and overwhelmed at times. And my intention tonight in talking about this topic is to give you some strategies on how to deal with it so that you can feel that you a little bit more effective when the notion or the feeling of hopelessness comes upon you, or when you feel overwhelmed. So let me just get right to it. I want to first make the distinction between hopelessness and overwhelm. So hopelessness is really something that we feel. Okay, it's something that is deep inside of us. It's a feeling. And overwhelm is really something that comes from our mind. It's the thoughts that we're having. It's I won't be able to handle it. I don't know how. I'm confused. Those are thoughts, and those thoughts lead to overwhelm. Hopelessness, on the other hand, is more of a feeling of despair, and something that is really, like I said just before, really deep inside. Hopelessness has a tendency or be a precursor to depression, when on the other hand, overwhelm is something that's more of a precursor to anxiety. Okay, sometimes they come hand in hand. They're like kissing cousins, but they are really distinct. Regardless of how great you are and how powerful you are, we all have those moments when we feel overwhelmed and we feel hopeless. And it's actually a good thing that when that happens to you, that you actually allow yourself to feel this way, because when we build up those what I would call challenging emotions inside of ourselves, or those challenging thought patterns, it's kind of like a pressure cooker. Okay, and if you ever seen a pressure cooker, when the pressure gets too intense, the pressure cooker will actually blow up. I can attest to that. When I was a little kid, we had one of those old-fashioned pressure cookers, and somebody didn't know how to use it correctly, and the entire sauerkraut ended up being stuck to the ceiling. So it's good for us to let out those feelings of overwhelm, to be with them, and or when we feel hopeless, and so that we don't have to be like a pressure cooker and just let them out all at once. So I want to talk a little bit more about overwhelm and give you some strategies. And I want to also talk a little bit more about hopelessness and give you some strategies. So let's talk about helplessness first. Helplessness. Okay, so I said a little bit ago that helplessness was something that's inside of ourselves. It's a notion of deep despair. It's a sense of I am out of control. I think actually where the two of them connect is that I have this feeling of I'm out of control. So hopelessness, it's it's all dark in the future. I have no hope. No matter what I do, it's not going to change. And so it can be a pretty intense feeling. And a lot of what's going on in the news, if you listen to this conspiracy talk, it can easily trigger you into feeling hopeless. So when you feel hopeless, there's sort of two ways to deal with it. There's a short-term strategy, and then there's a long-term strategy. The short-term strategy is looking at things that you can do right away, okay, that would actually make a difference. The long-term strategy is about doing something that will actually help you to change the way you think, the way you feel, and the way you behave, okay, so that it actually impacts you differently. Okay, so let's look at some of the short-term strategies. As I was preparing for this, I actually had this, this revelation that, wow, there's short-term strategies, and then there's long-term strategies. And sometimes I have to do a short-term strategy first. Why? Because, maybe the long-term strategy is too far off, or I'm really not in the space, to do something long term, like I need something right now because it's getting too intense. So short-term strategies, things like exercising, having a glass of water, doing some deep breathing. It could be that I'm watching Netflix. It could be that I'm getting myself something to eat, right? And as I'm saying those short-term strategies, as I'm listing them, you can see that we can quickly kind of go into judgment and say, well, these kind of short-term strategies are better than those. Well, maybe, okay, but sometimes I don't have a choice. So it might still be better for me to comfort myself for a moment with Netflix. There's other strategies, short-term strategies that are maybe not so healthy. Some people might smoke a cigarette, or some people might have a drink, and I'm not advocating that necessarily, but I want you to look at the bigger picture. I recently worked with a client, and she really had a lot of things going on, and growing her business, dealing with loss, mending a relationship, raising kids, writing a book. And one of the goals that she did have was to quit smoking. And, we looked at everything, and my recommendation was, maybe right now is not the best time for you to quit smoking. We can look at this later. Whether you smoke another month or another 2 months, it's really not going to make that much of a difference if you're a healthy person. So short-term strategies, they could be those that are what we would consider really good short-term strategies, and sometimes there are short-term strategies that are less ideal. Just know, like, do the best that you can. Long-term strategies are really those things where you take a deep look, and I would consider them more of a healing nature, right? Like, why do I have this to begin with? And what can I do so I'm not feeling hopeless, that I don't get triggered so quickly? Those are usually therapy, coaching. Some people, look at self-help books. Sometimes it could be, having an experience, meditation, prayer, really taking a deep look inside of yourself and going on a journey, and really see if you've wired yourself in such a way. Did you have some experiences in your life that that left you feeling this way, and you haven't really ever recovered from that? So it's almost like taking your past and you're bringing it into your present, into your future. So those are long-term strategies. And what is important here for you is that you make a list, okay? That you make a good list of your short-term strategies, and you make a solid list of potential long-term strategies. Maybe now is the time, right? Maybe now is the time to say, okay, it's been going on for years, and I want to take a look at this and see what I can do with it. Okay, let me pause here and switch to overwhelm, okay? Overwhelm, like I said in the beginning, is something that comes from the mind. It's I have too many projects going on. I don't know how to prioritize. How am I going to get this all done? Okay, I'm clueless. I don't know. I'm confused. Where am I going? So overwhelm is different in a sense of that you need to have a different strategy. And what I mean by that is you really want to have an immediate strategy. So there might be a long-term strategy, but it's like overwhelm. We want to deal with it right away. So the things that I wrote down, or that I can do in order to deal with overwhelm, is I want to focus on what I want to get done. What is my goal right now? Am I trying to get dressed? Am I trying to get out of the house? Am I trying to get my work done? Am I wanting to cook something? Do I want to clean the house? What is it that I actually want to get done? What is important for me? Okay. And then based on those goals, or that goal, I want to prioritize. So what is the most important thing? Oftentimes when there's overwhelm present, we have a tendency to jump around. What should I do first? Should I do this? Should I do that? So, and I'm not really thinking about my goal, or is it in alignment with the goal? If I'm think about a room that you have and it's completely cluttered, okay? and you walk in there, and your job is to organize it, and you're like, oh my God, it's too much. I'm never going to get this done. I don't even know how to start. So the focus would be, okay, my goal is to clean this room, and then the next step would be to prioritize. Okay, what is the most important? How much time do I have? What can I actually get done in this, specific time frame? The third important thing when we deal with overwhelm is to not multitask. Okay, so we have a tendency to have our phones and they ring and bing and make all kinds of noises all day long. And it really distracts you, because what your mind is doing, it's now for a moment looking what's going on with your phone, and then you're going and going back to your task, and then you have to refocus. So I know that a lot of you guys think that you can actually multitask, but there was an MIT study, and the MIT study says it's not really possible to multitask. It will feel and seem like we're multitasking, but it's still the brain going back and forth, back and forth, and back and forth. Okay. And each time that you jump, you're actually losing a little bit of focus, and it's getting a little bit more difficult to do the jumping back and forth. Okay. So important to focus on the goal, prioritize, and then limit the distractions, which are often could be the phone. Maybe you have to turn the TV off. Maybe music is too much, and so that you can really just focus on what it is that you're doing. Last but not least, look at the big picture. So if there's a lot of overwhelm going on, and you've worked on some of these tools and you practice them, but they're not really working for you, think about the big picture, and you can go as little or as big as you want. So the little picture could be my family. Okay, my family's okay, and it's important for me that I am okay with my family. Or you can look bigger and say, okay, what is the purpose of my life? What is the purpose of my existence? And for me, for instance, that will give me a lot of comfort. When I think about what am I doing here on the planet and who am I, then I will immediately be reminded of, yes, this is who I am. And of course, I can handle this no matter how tough it will be. And I will start to focus, and there will be a peace and a quiet that will will be present inside of me, because I know who I am, and I can move myself into acceptance. So some of you may not have that big picture. And for me, it's also like a spiritual connection. But you can focus on what is my big picture today, or this week, or with my family, or with myself, and that in and of itself will bring some calmness and ease into your mind. Okay, so let me summarize for you, because I don't want to give you too much to think about. So we talked about helplessness, and we talked about overwhelm. A big distinction between the two of them is that helplessness comes as an emotion. It's something that's really deep inside of ourselves, something that we feel deeply. Oftentimes it's based on the past, and overwhelm is something that's in the mind. It's thoughts that we have. Overwhelm, in some senses, it's easier to control because it's our thoughts, and so theoretically we are able to control our thoughts. What they have in common is that most of the time both of them come from a sense of feeling out of control. Overwhelm is kind of a precursor to anxiety, and hopelessness it's more of a precursor to depression. Some people experience a little bit of both. It is totally normal, especially in these times, for you to feel some of it at some times. It's good. It's okay. This is normal. You're a human being. We're all human beings, and it would be kind of inhuman if somebody's like always up 100% of the time. Helplessness, make a list of short-term and long-term solutions and that you can use. Make sure that the list is strong, that you have the list nearby when you need it, so that you can refer to it. When you look at overwhelm, also make a list. If you send me your email, if you ping me, I will send you the suggestions that I wrote down in terms of how to focus, short-term, long-term, bigger picture, small picture, prioritize, and helping you deal with overwhelm. And most important is that when you experience either one of those, that if all fails and none of these strategies work for you, that you find a place to accept yourself and accept all of you, all that you are and all that you're not, and find compassion and kindness and focus on the love that is available, even if you're not connected with loving yourself at that moment. Maybe you're too critical. Find a way to remember the last time that somebody loved you or sent you some love or hugged you, and use that to light a little candle inside of you, a little candle, and then expand the flame of the candle and move into loving yourself, kindness, generosity. And if there are judgment, forgiveness is always an opportunity for you to get neutral, to move back into the loving. It can be as simple as I forgive myself for judging myself, and then fill in the blank, or I forgive myself for judging, George for da da da. It's always available. When I started this forgiveness practice 20 years ago, it was something that I did in my head. I couldn't really connect to it. And then within time, I kept doing it over and over again. Finally, it actually, something clicked and I connected to it. So I can tell you, really, it works. And the deeper you go and the more specific you are about the judgments that you have, wow, the easier it is to let them go and to move back into the loving. Because really, what stands in between us working with those challenging emotions that we have, is our judgment. Because when there's more neutrality, then you can just, pick some of those strategies and help yourself and get yourself back into balance.